Okay. All right. And I'm just going to read the intro or the bio that Jonathan gave us, and then he's going to give a brief presentation. So, Jonathan Hill has lived in Arizona for most of his life and has spent over 20 years in the Valley. He grew up in Kingman before moving to the Phoenix area, where he built his career. Jonathan has not held elected office before, as he's a scientist and an educator, not a career politician. He got his PhD in geological sciences and works at Arizona State University on NASA missions exploring Mars and other planets. That's very cool. He decided to run for the Arizona Corporation Commission after taking a closer look at why utility bills across the state keep increasing. He discovered that this little known elected body has major control over electricity and water rates, yet many voters don't realize its power. Jonathan is running to bring transparency, accountability, and data driven decision making to the commission and to make sure that Arizona's energy future is affordable, reliable, and built for the next generation. Please welcome Jonathan Hill.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you for having us today. This is a great turnout. Margaret, how much time do I have? I don't want to go over my allotted limit.
Steering committee members, help me out. What did we decide on time?
We agreed on 10 minutes for each candidate, followed by a Q&A.
Okay, thank
Oh
you.
wow. Okay. I probably won't use that whole 10 minutes. I'm used to like get them giving us 3 minutes and then we get the hook line. So yeah, I'll keep it brief.
Okay.
So yeah, as Margaret said, my name is Jonathan Hill. I'm one of your candidates for the Arizona Corporation Commission, which is such an important office. For so many reasons, but right now affordability is such a huge part of the national conversation that we're having. And in Arizona, when you want to talk about affordability, the Corporation Commission is where the rubber hits the road. They are the organization that decides how much you pay for electricity, how much you pay for water, how much you pay for natural gas, those necessities that hit your bank account every single month repeatedly without end. And so we need to make sure we have good people on the commission who can properly regulate not just the prices, but also the operations of these large utility companies. Because while they operate in sort of a unique position in our society, it's one of the few cases where we allow companies to have monopolies, where there is no competition. So if you live in TEP's district, you don't have a choice of who you get energy from. And if you're not happy with them, you have no recourse except to pack everything up and move pretty far away. Um, but then you're just in another monopolies territory, and there's no guarantee that's going to be any better. So we, our state founders, established the Corporation Commission to be this, very powerful voter-driven body to make sure that companies, that corporations, monopolies are acting in the best public interest for all Arizonans. And unfortunately, over the last 3 decades, we've seen that role erode quite a bit. The people who hold the positions in the Corporation Commission have just continually abdicated their responsibility to watch out for Arizonans. So that's the big reason why I'm running. As you already heard, yeah, I'm not a career politician. This is only my second time running for office. The whole 20 years I've spent, in my career has all been in science and engineering. So yeah, I do work at another university. I won't repeat the name, up to the north of you. But so I worked there on a number of NASA space missions as a spacecraft engineer. So I got to work on the cute little Mars rover Spirit and Opportunity that looked like Wall-E from the Pixar movie. I worked on a Mars orbiter, 2 different asteroid missions, and now a mission that's on its way to Jupiter. Still have about 7 years till we get there. And even though I started out on the engineering side of those missions, I really over time fell in love with the science that we were doing. And most of that science is geology. And so, sort of mid career, I decided to change tracks. And even though I got my master's in aerospace engineering, I moved and got my PhD in geological sciences. And that's the expertise that I really hope to bring to the commission. Actually having an engineer who understands how power generation and distribution works, how water distribution works, but also a geologist. In so many places in Arizona, groundwater is such a critical issue. And in many cases, it's the Corporation Commission who gets to decide how much they're pumping, where they're pumping. And so I think having a geologist who can actually read the geologic maps, read the hydrological surveys and make informed decisions aquifer by aquifer, what the best path forward is, would be extremely beneficial. Um, I always like to point out, in the interest of fairness, there is currently another engineer on the commission. Commissioner Thompson, who's running for re-election, is a mechanical engineer. Unfortunately, he got his 20 years of mechanical engineering experience working for Southwest Gas. And coincidentally, he's never voted against a Southwest Gas rate increase, which I'm sure is just purely by coincidence. But some of you may recognize me. I did run for the Corporation Commission in 2024. Obviously, we were not successful in that race, but there were so many encouraging signs. We actually did make some really good inroads and overperformed in some really deep red parts of the state, because this message of affordability, of fairness with prices, even people, and I'm going to be in Lake Havasu City tomorrow, very red area. Even they were realizing that their own commissioners were, pardon my language, screwing them when it came to their prices, and they were not looking out for them. And so many people out there expressed to me that they were willing to hold their nose and vote for a Democrat for this office. I couldn't convince them to vote for Kamala at the top of the ticket, but for this office, they were willing to change sides of the aisle. And I usually just like to point out, one of the big problems we have with this race is Democrat voter drop off. Unfortunately, one sad statistic from last time was that if everyone who voted for Kamala Harris and Ruben Gallego at the top of the ticket had continued down, I think it was 5 more offices, and voted straight Democrat for the Corporation Commission, we would have won all 3 seats. Mm. And we would currently have a voting majority on the Corporation Commission. I guarantee you, TEP and APS and everyone else would not be lining up for double-digit rate increases. If that was the case, they would know it's dead on arrival. Project Blue and TEP never would have even taken their case to the Corporation Commission because they would have known it'd be dead on arrival. But instead, we're stuck with a 5-member Republican commission that is just, as I said before, continually abdicating their responsibility to look out for all of us. And so we really need to get the word out to our own people, your own friends, your neighbors, your family, how important it is to vote down ballot. Because, we like to point out that although everyone is familiar with, the president and the governor and, those top ticket races, as you move down the ballot, those offices tend to affect you more in your day-to-day lives. And what can affect you more in your day-to-day life than your utility costs? So it's so important for people to do their homework, be educated voters, and vote all the way down the ballot. And if we can do that, the good news is, if we can get a voting majority on the commission, a lot of things will change very, very quickly. And so that's what drove me to run again, is that we can actually make such a difference if we can just get some Democrats on this commission. So thank you again so much for having us. Really appreciate everyone tuning in on a Monday afternoon to learn about the least sexy office that you're ever going to see on your ballot. And yeah, I look forward to answering your questions later.
So we have some questions already in the chat, and so I'm gonna read them out to you. I'm just gonna make a note of the time so I don't, and I'm gonna save the questions if we don't have time to get to all of them. So the first question that we got was, what do you think about geothermal power?
So as a geologist, I'm really interested in geothermal power. It is a clean energy. It is basically counts as renewable. Um, However, in Arizona, we aren't necessarily blessed with a lot of geothermal resources. There's some down in Yuma, and there's some along the Colorado River, basically, sort of northwestern corner of Arizona. There's some, but certainly not enough to, be a significant portion of our energy grid, unfortunately. Oh,
Margaret, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thanks. It never fails. Okay. So the next question is, what is your position on data centers and particularly in Pima County? What effects do these centers have on consumer utility bills?
so I will say there has been some misinformation that has been circulated around. Um, and so I'd like to take this opportunity just to be abundantly clear. I am not in support of the data centers. The data centers are driving up your utility costs. You're having to subsidize them by paying for the infrastructure that they need to build. They are taking water that is better used for people, not technology, whether it's in homes or whether it's in agriculture. We need to grow our food, and I think most importantly, so many of them that we've seen recently are bad actors. They are treating this as a gold rush, and so every wannabe tech bro who wants to make a quick billion in their, or so they think, is trying to get into the data center market. And so when you have so many bad actors who are just trying to make a quick buck and get out and sell off the asset as soon as it's built to someone else and take your profit and go buy a yacht or something, it leads to a lot of problems. And the current corporation commission has utterly failed to prepare us for this. If you had talked to a lot of us a year ago, data centers were not on most of our radars. A year ago, certainly not 2 years ago. The Corporation Commission has been dealing with data center related issues for years now, but they have clearly failed to put in place protections. They have clearly failed to put in place regulations. And that's why you're having this sort of Wild West mentality among these developers. And so, if elected to the Corporation Commission, as I said before, I am against the Project Blue. It's a terrible deal. It doesn't belong in Tucson, and that's the other problem. So many of these things are being proposed in areas where they absolutely do not belong. Arizona as a whole is not a great place to put them to start with, but they're trying to put them near neighborhoods. They're trying to put them, in areas where it's obstructing, natural views, just because, again, they're trying to make a quick buck. They have no interest in relating to the community, building a relationship with the community, and they're just going to try to make their money and go. And so if that's their attitude, I don't think there's any place for them in Arizona right now.
Margaret,
Yes.
because we have three more questions, and I'm wondering if it would be good to hear the rest of speakers first so they can also respond to, and then at the end, have them
Hmm.
all respond to the questions. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
That's a good
yeah,
idea. Thank
yeah.
you, Tina.
Uh-huh.
So, our next speaker is Clara Pratt. Is she here in the meeting? Speak up if you're
Yes,
here,
it's
Clara.
I'm
there.
here. I'm here.
Okay, great. And Clara, are you okay with being recorded?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'm gonna read your bio and then you have 10 minutes for your presentation, okay?
Okay.
Clara is a business owner and energy expert with 2 decades of public service. She pledges to cut utility costs and hold power companies accountable. Having grown up in Arizona without running water or electricity, her personal history drives her commitment to ensuring affordable and reliable services for Arizona families. Clara knows what it's like for families to live at the margins of modern infrastructure and vows that she won't support policies that leave families choosing between paying an electric bill or putting food on the table. Please welcome Clara Pratt.
Well, hi, thank you so much. Good afternoon, almost evening. As was said, my name is Clara Pratt, and I'm running for the Arizona Corporation Commission. It is, as people here are probably well aware, but not everybody is aware. It's the body that makes decisions about our utilities, our energy future, and ultimately how we protect Arizona's consumers. For most people, the commission really isn't something that you see every day. It's not front page news, but it should be, it ought to be. It regulates the utilities that power our home, the water we drink, the pipelines beneath our feet. It oversees companies that want to do business in Arizona. The commission directly impacts all of our monthly bills and the reliability of our service. And ultimately, it impacts the long term economic energy strength of our state. And I'm running because we deserve, as Arizonans, energy that's affordable, reliable, and clean without what we've seen lately with these backroom deals and political games and a lack of transparencies. I'm a small business owner as well, and I'm a mother of two. I have been feeling the pressure of these rising costs. I've had to, re-strategize how to grow my business. I've had to think strategically about how we make things more affordable, for our family. And we're all feeling that, pressure of costs. We know that we have a lot of Arizonans in our community that are on fixed income. We have a lot of young families. We have a lot of people that are feeling the squeeze from groceries, gasoline. I spoke with someone recently who was in tears because her energy bill had gone from $179 to over $400 a month. And she said, I don't know how I'm going to afford it and afford just to live life. So that's why I'm running. I'm running for our families. And this is personal for me. I grew up without utilities, which I don't know many folks that are in their 40s that grew up without utilities. I usually have more in common with an older generation. But unfortunately, in Arizona, you do have communities, particularly rural communities, where there is a severe lack of infrastructure. So I know what it means when power, water, and basic infrastructure aren't guaranteed. It affects our health, our education, and basic opportunity. I carry that personal experience with me into every policy decision that I make. Personally, I have worked in 25 years in both public and private sectors. More recently, I've done extensive work in solar energy development and economic growth. My goal is really to expand opportunity for all Arizonans, strengthen infrastructure, and to make sure our communities, especially rural and tribal communities, I'm a member of the Navajo Nation, are not left behind. But that extends to all of Arizona. My professional experience, I worked in senior leadership roles at the United States Department of Commerce and the International Trade Administration, the U.S. Small Business Administration. I was assistant administrator for Native American Affairs, helping entrepreneurs across the country create small businesses and therefore jobs. And more recently, I served as the national director for the Biden-Harris campaign, and then ultimately ended up serving on the White House Infrastructure Advisory Committee, which the focus is really on building resilient and modern infrastructure all across the country. And that matters for these kinds of roles. It matters for the Corporation Commission because this job is ultimately about infrastructure. It's about responsible investment. It's about protecting our consumers, planning for the future. It's about understanding how federal funding, private markets, and public utilities, they all intersect. And we need to make smart choices for everyday Arizonans. My goals are to lower and make sure that our utility bills are fair, to ensure that we have energy independence at the top of our mind. We're a very sunny state and we have less solar than some East Coast states like Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Maine, and that makes zero sense to me. And also transparency and accountability, which we have seen the exact opposite with this Corporation Commission. Speaking a little bit about that fourth branch of government function, they've taken that responsibility that we have entrusted them with as Arizona ratepayers, and they've trampled on our rights. They've trampled on that trust. And we have to take that back because we are their oversight, because they operate in this autonomy. They are doing things that they shouldn't be getting away with. So when I take office, I will remember exactly who I serve, and that's not utilities, that's not data center developers, that's no one but the ratepayers and the consumers of Arizona and the voters of Arizona. So that's why I'm running, and I look forward to answering questions as well.
Thank you so much, Clara. Appreciate it. Tina, what do you think? I don't see any new questions in the chat. Do you think we should hear from Derek and then,
Yes,
okay.
I think it'll be good to have everybody, yes, the
Yes.
answer is yes.
Okay. Thank you, Tina. Okay, so we're going to hear from the third speaker, and then after that, we're going to do a kind of a group or panel or round robin questions for the questions that we've already gotten in the chat. So, Derek is here in the meeting, and I'm pretty sure he already consented to being recorded. So I'm going to read his bio, and then he's going to speak for 10 minutes. Derek Espadas isn't just another candidate for the Arizona Corporation Commission. He's an unapologetically people-powered champion who understands real change comes from action, not promises. Rooted in Tucson's grassroots movements, Derek stood shoulder to shoulder with local organizers during Project Blue, siding with neighbors over backroom corporate deals and proving he's willing to challenge concentrated power, not cozy up to it. His ACC vision, bold climate action, rapid expansion of clean energy, and fair, affordable rates for working families and small businesses, prioritizing them over monopoly utilities and wealthy shareholders. None of these goals are achievable by supporting data centers and repeating the behavior of our current commissioners. Derek is building a bottom up, consultant free, and values driven campaign which invites Arizonans to reclaim their power, both on their electric bills and in our democracy. Please welcome Derek Espadas.
Hi, everyone. I'm hoping you're not hearing the Rottweiler barking in the background. So it has been a very long week for multiple reasons. So I'm really appreciative that you're here. I'm sure you're exhausted. I know I am. But I also have learned over this process that gatherings like this is where I find my energy and my hope from. So I really appreciate you being here. Like it's been mentioned, and I'm sure because that's why we're here. I'm running for the Arizona Corporation Commission because I believe good policy should start with a simple question of what's the plan and how does it affect the people who live here? I meet with abuelitas worrying about the next utility hike, small business owners frustrated with unpredictable bills, and even the most unsophisticated of economic understanding, they understand that a 14% increase is going to kill a lot of our restaurants and small margin businesses, which is especially detrimental in rural areas where entire communities are living off of one or two businesses. And to have those closed down, you've just shut down an entire town. And we have families that are trying to keep cool during the summer. I actually lost an air conditioning unit one summer, and at $15,000, I couldn't replace it and spent the summer without air conditioning. And it has a huge effect on like mental health. Like you don't realize how much that bears down on you.
Right.
Everyone wants the same thing. They want a fair system. And a fair system. So there's this misunderstanding that we get usually from the other side of the aisle that, people just want to take advantage and they want things for free. A lot of people, when you talk to them, want to pay their bills. They just want it to be fair and they don't want to have to choose between air conditioning, medicine, groceries. They want to pay. They just want fairness. And just, we've been talking about data centers, been fighting these damn things for seems like forever, but like since Jonathan pointed out, it hasn't been that long because part of what they do is they have these NDAs that keep information from seeping into the community. So the community doesn't really get to react to them with enough time. And some of them use more power than an entire town. With Project Blue on the record, what was stated is currently the largest customer is actually the Morenci mine, and Morenci itself And when asked if there was a need for more power, who would get it, they said they would shut down Morenci because Project Blue would be the new biggest customer. And so that throws in, just another wrinkle into the fabric of oppression that's been being brought to light with these data centers. As has been mentioned, the accountability and not having guarantees for the community and the ridiculousness, quite frankly, of our board of supervisors that signed a redacted contract. So even the government officials don't know or get the information that they're requesting, but are still acting on it. And this affects everyone in the community. So my stand is simple. No new data centers, period. And just as I'm doing the work now, I'll do the research and form alliances because I'm willing to protect our shared resources. Because it's not fair for these corporations to make huge profits, but for families to pay the price. And I know many of you have been at this work far longer than myself or any elected official. Real change happens when communities refuse to accept that's just how it is, or that's the system. There's nothing you can do about it. And that's exactly the resistance and spirit that I'm going to bring to the commission because I don't believe in protecting the system. I don't believe in maintaining the status quo. And so it requires listening, it requires asking questions. And for those of you who know how the ACC works, that's where the power is. The power is in the question asking. And it's insisting on making the process more people-centered. And I'm sorry if any of you are lawyers or lobbyists in here, but the lawyers and the lobbyists get to speak. The people are allowed 2 minutes and they're cut off. The lawyers and lobbyists are allowed, at the discretion of the chair, to say whatever they want and for however long they want. And that is why we end up with the decisions that are being made. Now, we're not here to make anyone comfortable today. We're here to make democracy uncomfortable. And because comfort is what allows injustice to dig deeper roots. Every time we stay quiet, every time we wait our turn, the people in power breathe a little easier. And our neighbors lose another piece of their voice. So yes, we have to push. And we're here to challenge, to disrupt, to demand better. Because real democracy doesn't live in silence or politeness. It lives in tension, in truth, and the power of people who refuse to sit down when it matters most. And I will continue to push back on the Pratt Hill slate. And though many have expressed to me that we just need to elect a Democrat, I stand firm that we need to do better than that. Because when we elect Democrats that take on Republican qualities, it does not provide us the beacon of strength or unity or forcefulness that we need. We saw that here in Pima County with Rex Scott and Matt Hines. And that's what led to Project Blue pushing forward. So I will enter into the realm of political suicide, but that's okay because I hate politics. I prefer service and action. And because letting injustice hide under a defense of, well, they're not as bad as the other people is how we arrived at this state of exhaustion. And so Saturday, when I brought up Claire's company, Painted Desert, and we were given the gaslighting version of their practices, Hill and Pratt then decided to put on a show, yelling at me while their team recorded the drama. Now, I don't know how the optics of yelling at the guy in the wheelchair play out, but that's not for me to really decide on. And Claire kept exclaiming, "How dare you bring my people into this?" Well, it was her people that brought me into this. Chapter houses feeling that their rights had been stolen. Issues made public on record and again reflect the lack of community priority, transparency, and accountability that has been discussed. It is exactly what we see in communities up and down this state when the corporations and their data centers take over. On the record, Painted Desert has admitted to using records of deceased members to obtain land. Requests from the Western Agency Council to further review projects have been ignored. Chapter houses are currently fundraising to take legal action. The initiative did pass, but again, it is exactly the same pathway and tactics used by Project Blue to pass. What is legal right does not make for what is right, especially when that person is seeking more power to assert in these programs. In an hour, there'll be a meeting regarding this in the Navajo Nation. The Navajo Nation, or chapter houses in the Navajo Nation, are concerned that her maneuvers are to bring data centers to the nation, or to at least provide, because of the electrical capacity and lack of storage, to provide power to the data center up in Page. These are not, I was told that I was good at sleuthing. This was not sleuthing. This was information brought to me. And so my concern is I am more concerned with outcomes than politics. So I'm willing not to play politics. I will act in defense of communities, especially when they ask for it. And so this is where we're at. And being in place of authority and claiming to be the victim and silencing people is exactly why we are exhausted today. This is exactly reflected of everything we're trying to fight against.
Thank you,
And
Derek.
that,
I'm
yes,
gonna stop you now because you've run over your time.
sure,
But we're gonna go on to some questions and answers. And
absolutely.
so
Thank you.
these yes, thank you very much for your presentation. And
Yes.
we had a couple of questions that relate to the Colorado River. And so I'm wondering what is the role of the Arizona Corporation Commission with regard to the federal water cuts to the Colorado River. And another question that we had was when the Colorado River no longer has a water level that will allow turbines that provide our electricity to operate, what options are possible? One plan for the Colorado River would stop the release of CAP water to Phoenix and Tucson. And what do you see as a solution? So, whoever wants to jump in, please address the Colorado River issues. Thank you.
Do you want us to go in order or just whoever?
No, just jump in. Just, yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. So, I've worked for many, many years on Colorado River water issues with CRUA, et cetera. And it's one of the most serious issues on drought impacting downriver users nationwide and with electricity. So really the issue, and I think it relates to some of the other questions about CAP water, et cetera, and having CAP energy cut off or water cut off to Tucson, they're all interrelated. Lake Mead is unfortunately at some of the lowest levels it has ever been in modern history. But we also have senior water rights users within the state of Arizona that have these water rights. And there have been some really elegant solutions that have been brought forth to the table from tribal water users. Governor Stephen Lewis from Gila River Indian Community had brokered a deal with Phoenix area to basically lease some of their tribal water rights to the city. And that has been a really good solution. It's not a long-term solution for sure. Born and raised on the Navajo Nation, I would rebut everything that Derek has said as complete false misinformation. I don't want to get into a tit for tat, but everything that just came out of his mouth has been, like most things, untrue, unfortunately. And I hate to do that. I've been trying to be collegial and kind and nice. But being the nice person while somebody says things that are just untrue are really problematic, especially in this race. To be called the man when I literally grew up doing my homework by kerosene lantern and hauling my own water is pretty offensive, especially from someone who is not from the state and is pretending to know stuff about the Navajo Nation that he doesn't know about. So I would just caution, a lot of caution with that information because it's just simply not true. For me, I definitely don't want data centers on my tribal nation. I've never advocated for data centers on my tribal nation. In fact, what we've done through Navajo Power is to power over 500 homes across the Navajo Nation that have never had electricity before. Little kids that grew up just like me that wanted to be able to do homework and have a computer. So that's the work that I'm interested in. And that's the environment that we're dealing in. We're dealing with very high cost water usage with very low value agricultural users as part of the issue with this entire Colorado River system. I also have it on good authority. There is one data center in the Phoenix area that's actually using Colorado River water. So I think, from an AZ Corporation Commission standpoint, that's the nexus. And you have to make sure that where you have primacy from the Corporation Commission, you're pushing back and protecting our resources, our land, and our water. What might look like desert that has nothing to some people, people that are like, let's just stick this here. You have to be super careful because the desert is a very, very fragile ecosystem as well. And you can't willy-nilly do development anywhere that you want. And that's the problem that we've seen in our state with large-scale data centers and others.
Right.
So
Thank
that
you,
was
Clara. Yes, Jonathan, do you want to talk about Colorado River water, please?
Yeah, Clara covered it beautifully. I'll just add a shout out for some people who will be fellow candidates in November. It's really important that you are educated and vote for the Central Arizona Project Water Board. I believe Pima County gets 2 representatives. I could be wrong about that. It might just be 1 this year. But it's really important to vote very good people into that office. It's even further down on the ballot than Corporation Commission, but they're the ones who are actively in those negotiations on behalf of Arizona. They're the ones who are going to have to make those really hard decisions because unfortunately, when it comes to, like you said, possibly cutting off water to homes in the Phoenix area, already cutting back on water to agricultural users, who that might help in the short term, but then you're impacting the food supply. There's no easy decisions left. Everything from here on out is going to be a hard decision. And so you want really good people making those decisions. And unfortunately, water regulation in Arizona is kind of piecemeal because it's such an important issue that everybody wants a little piece of it. And so the Corporation Commission regulates the private water companies, who are pumping or distributing water for profit. But in many other cases, it's the Central Arizona Project Water Board that is making decisions about the Colorado water. So,
Yeah, and I would have to agree that that is what makes it very difficult, it's not as simple as having one agency in charge of water. And then often the agencies, even internally for Arizona, are in conflict. Just recently with one of the CAP announcements, there was a Republican legislator that wanted to pass legislation that we should announce to people that we are in a state of emergency with water. And that became a fight. And one of the few bits of legislation where the Republicans turned against themselves, saying that we didn't need to alarm anyone. And I've long been fascinated with the Colorado River water system and just what we see. I'm not the technical expert, but I don't think you need to be a technical expert to see where the water lines on everything have dropped. To
Yeah.
see that infrastructure, even here in Marana with the housing, they didn't do proper assessments of the land. And so as the water has dropped in lower into the ground, there's foundational cracks. And so even if we
Okay,
look at
Derek, I'm sorry. We have about four more questions and we're
Sure.
running out of time, but thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And maybe Margaret, we don't have that many, so I can
Mhm.
like Laura has a question, and Laura, I'll just let you say your question yourself. Is Laura here?
Yes, hi, thank you.
Okay.
Um, And yeah, I sat through a miserable ACC meeting when the TEP application was on. So I kind of saw some sausage being made. What if you are elected to the ACC? How do you get the technical and legal expertise and synthesize it to really kick the tires on some of these applications and find the gaps and the tricky parts?
So anybody can begin.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. So the ACC is not just the five commissioners up there. There's a judge that adjudicates, and there's staff. And the staff is very important. Um, in my opinion, the staff highly sides with whatever the chair wants. And they're attached, as well as the adjudicating judge, they're attached to the commissioners. So and I've been looking into this, but haven't found a good way of how do you solve that problem. If you have staff, and their numbers and data are usually what gets taken as truth, but again, they're attached to what the chair wants. And so staff has to be addressed.
Okay. John, and then Clara. Yeah?
Yeah, I'll just add that, I think actually there's actually a lot of expertise and knowledge available to the commission that they simply choose not to listen to. So there's even an even more unknown, underappreciated agency in Arizona called RUCO. And their job is to basically act as the public defenders. When the utility companies come to ask for a rate increase, they're your attorneys, our attorneys, who push back against the utilities. And as we've seen for years now, the commissioners just completely ignore RUCO's recommendations. They have been against so many of these rate increases, so many of these deals, even though they're understaffed, they're doing the work, but they're just being utterly ignored. And so I think that's right out of the gate, day one. You can listen to other knowledgeable agencies like RUCO, who are offering the information if the commissioners will just use it.
Yeah, no, I would echo that. That's exactly right. There's a wealth of information and data out there. Jonathan and I went to an APS rate case hearing a few weeks back with the Arizona Corporation Commission. And we sat there in the office listening in the hearing room, listening to resident after resident after resident, both in person and on the phone. We were able to connect with many of them in person. But the issue is the corporation commissioners themselves don't show up to listen to the public comments. And that was pretty startling. In this particular hearing case, Commissioner Myers was in attendance along with the administrative hearing judge, but that is not usually the case. Usually it's the public giving testimony to the administrative judge without any commissioners there. And a couple of commissioners were actually in the building because their cars were there. They just couldn't be bothered to come, down a flight of stairs to listen to the public. So I think they have all of this resource at their hand, including subject matter experts and the people themselves, and they just refuse to listen. It's sort of a done deal. They've made their decision, and they're going through the exercise of listening to people without actually taking into consideration what they're asking for.
Okay, thank you. And Sue Heck, you had a question? I'm scrolling through it. Sue, are you here? Okay, Dorian Dodson, you also had a question, or I can look for
Sorry,
Sue.
I was
Yeah, go
trying
ahead,
to get
Dorian.
the mute button.
Oh, sorry, Sue. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about. I was just, I had to run out with the dog for a minute, but I was just wondering what control the Corporation Commission has over the water, and since the negotiations aren't going well with the Colorado River water thing.
Okay,
The big
that
cut.
was probably discussed while you were gone.
Okay, I'll go
Yeah.
back and look through.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, don't worries, but we will move on. And Dorian, you had a question about the role of the responsibility of environmental impact?
Yeah, because obviously a good state corporation commission must look out for consumers, so that's absolutely understood. and very, very important that we get people in there who feel that way. But I'm also wondering, and maybe on a more global perspective, what do you see as the Corporation Commission members' role in looking out for the long-term environmental impact, which would be not only for the immediate consumer, but also for future generations of consumers?
I think that's a wonderful question. I can take a crack at that. Um, well, it's not like their direct mandate, right? I do think it's an incredibly important part of what falls under their purview. We've seen this Corporation Commission take a very lackadaisical approach to renewable targets, a rollback and disincentivizing rooftop solar for people that want to invest in rooftop solar, paying less on a net metering portion so that people, I mean, they don't see that it's worth it. Even though we live in a very sunny state, it would make a lot of sense to have rooftop solar so it's going back into the grid, but they're disincentivizing it. And I think it's important. It's incredibly important, and every little bit counts. I saw the comment about serving water upon request. That's not a silly idea, and not, no pun intended. It seems like a drop in the bucket, but every tiny policy decision stacks up and adds up. It's just like, making the choice to not use AI generated information for our campaigns, things of that nature, because I personally don't think it's appropriate to run on an anti-AI data center ticket and then go around and use AI for all my talking points or for my images. Little things add up, and we need to do everything we can as corporation commissioners to make sure that we are actually making differences to ensure that our state is energy independent within my lifetime. We need to make the world a better place for our kids and grandkids. Bottom line, that's our goal in everything we're doing.
Okay. Is it okay if we keep going because we still have some questions? Okay, thanks, John. Thanks, Derek. And Marlene, you had a couple of questions about the whole system. Did you want to talk about those or ask those? Not talk about.
Yes, I do. And I may have misunderstood how the commission actually works. You keep referring to an administrative hearing judge. Who makes the decisions? In other words, if you come in and win this election with 2 Democrats going in, you still have 3 Republican commissioners on the ACC. So is it the hearing judge, administrative judge, that makes the decision? And what difference would it make as to the party composition of the commission? Do you understand my question?
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Derek.
Oh, yeah. What I can do is actually send you an 8-step. This is how the commission works, because it isn't just they file a rate case and you show up on day 1 and everything's going to be done. It is quite a lengthy process involving different levels of the ACC and different departments. And so I can make that available as soon as I scan it in and
That'd be
send it
great.
over.
Jonathan?
And it's from them, so it's not a partisan or campaign oriented. It's from the ACC.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just add that, that's a great question. The commission is very complex, as Derek said. I think you can think of the administrative law judge as sort of the umpire, in the grand scheme of things. Make sure that everyone's following the protocol and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it is the commissioners, the 5 commissioners who take a vote. It's majority rule. And someone asked, and I answered it in the chat earlier, since there's only 2 commissioners on the ballot this year, what can we really accomplish? And I think we actually can accomplish a lot, because I always tell people, you can't get to 3 until you get to 2 first. So we really need to build that strong foundation, have 2 commissioners on there who can begin pushing back, show people what Democrats will do if they're elected to the commission, so that we can come back in 2028 and take a majority. And even in the meantime, until we have a majority, thanks to one of our previous Democratic commissioners, Sandra Kennedy, there is court precedent that a single commissioner, one commissioner by themselves, has subpoena power. So you can subpoena all sorts of documents, financial records that the utility companies have not volunteered as part of their rate case to see what's going on behind the scenes. And that's how Sandra Kennedy exposed that APS was funneling money to Republican candidates to try to get friendly commissioners elected. So it's a very powerful ability that the commissioners have. And yeah, any Democrats we elect in 2026 will have that to start fighting back with.
It's a form of oversight on the commission to have that power in a way. Yeah. And Patricia, you had two questions. Have they been answered or would you like to? There you are. Yeah. You're still muted, but take your time. Yeah. Okay, Patricia, you find how to unmute and we'll go to Diana and come back. Diana Hubbards, you had a question?
Well,
Oh, Patricia's unmuted. Yay. I'm sorry, going back and forth.
are you talking about my most recent ones about restaurants?
Well, you had two. Yeah. I don't know if they've both been answered.
Well,
So
the
go
one
ahead.
about the first one was about the Colorado, well, those first
Right.
two were about the Colorado River.
Yeah.
And, so I don't think any of us really know what the feds will do.
Right.
But it could be very unpleasant for Arizona. So, but the other thing was about requiring restaurants to not automatically serve water to customers. Maybe even having a sign on the door saying water upon request only. And that will not save tons of water. However, it's likely to put in the minds of people how precious water is.
So what is your question, Patricia?
That was not a question. That was simply a statement.
I was just wondering.
Yeah. No, there would have been a question mark had I.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So, Tina, I'll just read Diana Hubbard's question,
Okay.
and we can go from there. So the question is, what are your thoughts about cuts to solar energy incentives and the unfair policy to get charged higher electric prices at night when we have a solar unit?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It disincentivizes solar users. And the reason they're doing it is because it doesn't provide revenue to the folks that make money off of extractive resources. It's plain and simple. And so that's something that, would definitely need to be addressed as well, is how do we incentivize instead of de-incentivize renewable energy in our state? And the only way we're going to meet the energy gap that we have in our state is by producing more domestic energy and not relying on oil and gas. And God forbid, the coal conversation keeps coming up. We can't go backwards. We need to move forward.
Yeah, I think it's also the last couple of months, the commission removed the rest rules, which were the environmental milestones, and in their own discussion said that they were inert, like it wouldn't hurt anyone, but they made the point to repeal them to show how anti-renewable they were and to set that standard. And I believe Jonathan and I were at a water utility conference where Commissioner Thompson announced that we must support the president's vision of increasing data centers everywhere. So as much as there's a lot of rhetoric of how it's a nonpartisan issue, it becomes very partisan from the dais.
That's great. Thank you very much, Derek. Tina, do you agree that it's time to wrap it up and move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I
Mhm.
also want to just say, and I think we all agree, this has been really, really great. And I'm thinking about letters to the editor. I'm thinking about that all of us can write, just like the RTA has been in the Daily Star. And I think we need to start with the ACC. And the information that we've gotten today is going to really help that. And the whole down ballot thing. So yes, I talked too long. thank you all for your questions too.
Do we want
Yes,
to put
great.
in the chat the equal link if any of these candidates still need
Oh.
signatures for their nominating petition?
I think I did, but
But
I
maybe
can do that
do it
again.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I will
that'd
do
be
that
great.
again.
And I
Yeah.
believe you can only vote for two of the
Yes.
three, or sign their
Okay.
petitions for two of the
Yes.
three.
So yes, I've just dropped the link for the petitions in the chat, and I too want to very much thank the people who have presented here today. Jonathan Hill, Clara Pratt, and Derek Espadas. We really appreciate your
Yes.
weighing in and answering questions and engaging with these really important issues. And I hope that everyone has a better idea now of how important the Arizona Corporation Commission is, and goes to nominate people with the petition, the nominating petitions, and definitely remind your friends and family to vote down ballot. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. Okay, I'm just gonna stop the recording.